So that is my impression of sketch of an Echinacea plant. So I can show you how to produce shapes like this. Okay, so it's enough of an impression to show you what you're looking at. Okay, so we'll start off by doing some flower forms, and I can just take it stage by stage with you. So I'm squeezing out a bright pink and a bright red. So there's quite a lot of issues or things that you need to think about. So number one, with your sketchbook, this is just cartridge paper. So if you so what you're going to need to remember is you don't have it on a surface. So if I was going to do a landscape, it's going to be more difficult for you to see your tonal differences because it's a bright white paper. So when you're practicing and when you want to do a still life or do a full painting, I highly recommend that you tint your background. It serves two functions. The first, which if you remember me telling last week, by having a slight tone to your paper, so it could be a soft cream or that yellow ochre colour that we did before that was diluted with white paint, or a biscuity colour, just a soft colour. It just takes the whiteness off your page, and that means when you start painting, you would put the dark tones in first, and then the highlights or the whites would be the last thing that you do in any shape or any form that you do. Okay, and because you've got a tinted background, it's easier for you to judge your tonal values. Okay, but you can try both. The second thing is with acrylics, because they are very thirsty, acrylics will get sucked or absorbed into the paper quite quickly. And that's another reason for putting an initial layer on the paper, because that initial, even though it's a thin layer of acrylic paint, that initial wash has already absorbed into the surface. So if you wanted to blend in a soft sky or water, reflections in a water, it's going to be easier for you to blend and do a softer, more polished effect if you've already put on an initial layer, or or if it's a really hot day, that's when I would be saying, right, I'm going to add some primer or add some extender onto it or gloss, something to make it a bit easy for me to keep going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards in a blending motion. And it won't start to, because acrylics dry so fast and so quickly, they will start to get tacky, and that's when you struggle to blend smooth lines with acrylics. Right, so for our first step, because we were doing flower forms, I'll show you how I painted this shape. Okay, whenever you're looking at a flower or anything, we want to try and emphasize its three-dimensional form. But what we need to emphasize with any flower is try and emphasize light bits and then medium tones and then get darker bits. So whatever object you are painting or studying, really try and emphasize the light and the dark, and that will really give your paintings a more three-dimensional feel in the way that they work. Okay, so I'm going to start off. We're going to need a bright pink, bright red, and then on the other side I've got some burnt umber, because this purple area we're going to need to build in, and then we're going to need to bring in some pink on brightness on the other side before we bring it down. We will obviously be using some yellow because there's bits green at the moment. All right. And there's another one down there actually. Right. Okay. Right then. So I've got just a little small rounded brush. Okay. And I'm just going to sketch in a rough shape for you. Okay. So you can start to dot in a nice cone shape. Okay, and I'm deliberately going to make it quite light on this side, and then as I get into the center I'm going to dot it a bit more. Okay, now I'm starting to pick up and starting to change my color and starting to make it a little bit darker, and I'm just dotting it around so we get this nice textured feel of this flower head. Okay, and what I'll do on camera, I will lift out some of these just to really try and emphasize, because the camera perhaps can't pick it out as much. I've got a red, a bright pink or here, and then I've got a magenta which is slightly deeper. But if you go over to your pink and you want to darken it down, you can add a speck of purple to it. If you add a brown to it, it'll go quite dull. But that's anything that gives the tonal difference, the tonal change to it. Okay. So while this is drying, we're gonna have a look at doing these petals coming out. So on this side, again, we want it to be slightly lighter. So we want to make sure that the pink on this side is nice and light. So you can use it on its own. And as I say, I've just got a rounded brush here. Okay. And we're just going to flick out, look, flick out like that. Flick out like that. And then press a bit harder. Notice I am leaving a little bit of a gap between the petals. Now I'm coming to the center here. I'm going to slightly change the color of my pink and add a bit of red to it, just so it looks a little bit deeper in tone. Okay. So it's well loaded, this brush, and the paint's very thick and buttery. It's not watered down a lot. Okay. And I start at the top and then I flick it down and then I drag it down. You can also get quite a nice petal shape. I'm just going to change the colour a little bit. I'll try to really emphasize it on my camera. Would normally make it a little bit more subtle than this, but I want to make it look sure it looks nice and strong for you. Okay. Now we can go back. Just make that a little bit stronger there. There we go. So now we've got a fairly good suggestion of it lighter on this side, medium here. It's not quite dark enough on this side yet. It depends on what you see with your study. Now this is beginning to be a little bit dry, we can start to put in this dark shadow to show the depth of the shapes that we're looking at. Okay. So for that one, you can either use a dark brown. It almost looks black when you're actually looking at the Echinacea. So make sure your brush, you might need to go down the size of the brush if you want to. I'm going to use the same one because it's got a good point to it. Okay. So now I'm just picking up my pure umber and I'm using it pure, so it's straight from the tube, mixing it on the thing. I'm not diluting it at all. I want it to be really strong. Okay. And I want to show, so there it is on my tip. Okay. And I want to get it looking really dark in here. Let's get this dark crease in here. And I want to show some textures in there. And just by doing a few dots, it's now beginning to look, give that three-dimensional feel to it. Okay, and then the last stage is to get the stem in. So the Echinacea stems are quite olive, they're quite olivey looking, so we're going to need some white paint. I'm now going to pick up some cadmium yellow pale, or cadmium yellow, and I'm going to pick up blue. It's a fairly neutral colour that you want. We don't want it to be too cold because it's quite that sort of silvery greenish colour. So if we go for an ultramarine, and we only need the merest tiniest amount, we don't need a lot. So I'm going to mix my green. Okay, so here is my ultramarine. Because I'm aiming for a fairly neutral green. It's also looking quite dull or silvery looking. Okay. You may find you can use your sap green or something like that. I just tend to mix my greens. There we go. And if ever you're looking at your reference, you're thinking, oh, that's too pure. Remember what we said about greens. In order to knock them back, you need to add something on the opposite spectrum. So if I go up to my pink, because it's in the flower, this is quite often what I would do for botanical flowers. I'm going, and look, I've reduced it down to a speck. I'll bring a bit back. And you may not be able to see that on camera, but it's made it go very, very the merest, sagest colour, grey, which is what I'm after. So now that's looking more like a soft sage colour. It doesn't need to be much, but that's just a hot tip to think about. When you're painting stems, you get this nice soft sagey green rather than the bright in your face green. All right. So we know that we've got this alignment coming here, and we know that the stem needs to come fairly central. So then I push down and I just drag my hand down. So now I've got my stem the way I want it. And because I want the shadow to be up here, you can say, well, I want to do more of a green shadow. So if you just you could pick up your purple, you could pick up that brown. And I'm going to immediately go over the top with it while it's still wet and drag, and then I'm going to lift off and take my finger away, and now I've got the dark colour at the top and it's going down to the pale colour at the bottom. It's little things like this that are going to make your flower stems and things show up more. Look. So I've got two colours on my stem. Oops, just do that, sharpen that up a bit. There we go. Got a little bit of a wiggly row line there. Let's just tidy that. There we go. And you can emphasize that even more. Say, well, that's still not dark enough. Okay. So now I'm just picking up this pure purple. So I can say, I want to make this really dark. I want to show that it's really in shadow. Okay. So I've now put this sort of pure purpley brown underneath to show the shadows shining on there. And I'm dragging now with a dry brush. It's completely dry. Okay. Wipe when I can hear you rinsing out. So when you rinse out your brush, wipe your please wipe your brush dry again. So you don't want your brush to be with this technique that I'm using. This brush is clean and damp, but it's not dripping with water. So if I'm washing my brush out, I then tap it, and then I'm wiping it with a rag so that it's clean and dry but not dripping with water. So when I pick up my paint again, it's nice and concentrated. So there you are, that's how you would paint an echinacea. And then what you can do if you want to is, now that this is settling, if you want to emphasize or tidy up any of the edges of the petal that you think, do you know what, I really want to show the shape of it, you can reload and say, right, I would like to really emphasize this petal here and that one there. There we go. And you could say, well, actually, I don't like that one edge there, so I'm going to just sharpen that off or something like that, the way that it's going. All right, so you get all these nice little shapes going. You can also lift. It doesn't look quite as good, but you can lift. So if this is white, I can say, right, I really want to bring it up a little bit here, or a bit of highlight there. Okay, so it's beginning to catch. So I'm now picking up my brightest pink and I'm adding some white paint to it. Okay, to lift it up a little bit. Okay, and you could do the same with your cone shape at the top if you wanted to. But I find that the white and the pink, once this pink that I've got, it has white added to it, it doesn't look as, it's not as striking as using the paint on its own. Okay, so that's how I would tackle that sort of shape. So you can see this gives you an idea as to how I've produced a flower shape like this. Okay, so I've got my red and I've just dotted it around the top. Hang on, should we just paint this one? Hang on, let's just do that. It doesn't take long when you've got an idea of how you can do different shapes. So for this one, I'm going to need a nice bright primary yellow. And we've got the red, I've already got the reds on the page, so let's do that. So let's put that one down there. And then you can see how we do this, and then that way it gives you some practice. So there you are, you've got one there. So let's put this one at the top. So we're going to start off again, just tapping. Just tapping round. so we get a nice shape that we're happy with. Okay, and now I'm going to go for a nice bright red. Okay, and I'm going underneath. I'm not going on top of the yellow, I'm going underneath the yellow. So I'm going to do a few little taps around the top, and then I'm now, so notice also I am traveling or twisting my brush round in the direction of the center of the flower. And I'm trying to suggest all these tiny little stones or little shapes, and we want it to have a little tiny little skirt, so I'm just doing the merest dot at the top to get the shape that I'm after. Something like that. And again, because we've got depth to this flower, we need to put some shadow or dark tone in here to show the center. So pick up that brown or that purple you've got. Okay, and we're just gonna get rid of this white, and we're just gonna do a little tap, tap, taps in here. It's quite dry. It's not, I'm not hugely, I'm just doing enough to get rid of that white page. I'm not going too mad, so I'm not blobbing it on too thickly because, whoops, oh, now I am. I'll just dot that slightly. What I'm trying to do is just, there we go, knock it back. There we go. That's probably all we need. Just a little bit of shadow tone, and we'll do the odd dot going into the red like that. Not a huge amount. And then again, I'm going to pick up my magenta, my permanent magenta, my pink, or rose, or whatever pink you've got. Or it could be orange if you don't have pink. Just as we did before, this is really, I've tried to load lots and lots of colour into my round brush. And I'm going to try and put my brush down and then flick with my hand. Okay, so I'm going to put my brush down and then flick. Oop, that's too short. So go back to the point and then go flick it out. There we go, that's better. Now I'm going to do it on this side, but I don't want it to be as thick as that one. So I'm going to press lightly on its side and just do a little flick out. And then again to the center, and I'm just going to flick. And then flick. And then flick. And then flick. And another one over here. I think we'll do another one. There, flick. So I need to start, so I'm going to do a few dots here, and I need to start changing the colour of the petals. Okay. What I'll do is I've added the tiniest mirrors of purple to my pink, just to emphasise it on camera for you guys, that I'm changing the colours of these petals very slightly. It's probably show up stronger now. So if I then go down and then flick down and then change my colour again and then flick down, and then I need to change my colour again. So it's sort of flitting from one pink to another. So you're just getting some slight variations and slight changes in the petals and the way that they're going. Let's get this to look a bit better. There we go. And you can obviously go around as much as you want until you get the shape that you're after. So what we are looking for is to show that some petals are coming forward, some petals are going down. So you're beginning quite instantly and quite quickly getting a difference in the way that some of these are developing. There you go. Let's make that one a dark one. Can you see it captures your eye more? See how, so if you keep it uneven, then it catches your eye more. So I've deliberately emphasised it there so you can see how it sort of goes. All right. And then with this one, with the study that I was looking at, it was very light at the top. So if we use that same method of mixing our green, so I used my ultramarine blue and my yellow to get a nice colour. I've got a lemon yellow, so this time I've made my green a little bit more citrusy. Okay, and I want it to remain looking citrusy at the top, so I'm not going to add any pink to it. Okay, so this is, so it's got a nice bright pink to it, much green to it, sorry, correct myself. And again, so if you just decide, right, okay, there's the stem, okay, and then I'm just going to pull my hand down. So pull my hand down, drag it down, tidy up that little edge so it looks like it's going up there. Okay, and then this had a little blush of orange on the stem, so I'm just quickly mixing up my orange. Okay, and you can go to the same point and then just drag it. Oops, drag it up. And now I've flicked it out, so I'm just washing out my brush, wiping my brush clean, and then wiping it back down. So now I've got a graduation, a smooth graduation. So I've got the light at the top for this particular one, so it's opposite way round, I suppose. And then I'm putting the colour down at the bottom, depending on which way you see your flowers. So it's getting that depth and really trying to emphasize the light and the dark will really start to make your flowers look strong and look three-dimensional. So you can see how we've made our Echinacea type flowers and our daisy type flowers work.